Hello friends, today we are going to talk about Nature and Types of Assessment Part 2, Module number 14. The objectives of this module are to know about personality inventories and the various types of personality inventories available, to know the types of questionnaires used for personality assessment, and to determine the uses of various types of interview methods in personality assessment. Definition of personality inventory. Personality inventories are the types of tests that attempt to characterize the personality of an individual by objective scoring of replies to a large number of questions concerning his or her own behavior. A personality inventory is a self-assessment tool that counselors and other development professionals use to help people learn about their personality types. It reveals information about individuals' social traits, motivations, strengths and weaknesses and attitudes. A personality inventory is a questionnaire or other standardized instruments designed to reveal aspects of an individual's character or psychological makeup. It helps to reveal the respondent's personality traits. There are several types of personality inventories. Some of them are generic personality inventories and some more specific in terms of what they intend to assess, like autonomy, locus of control, etc. Personality inventories are used for a variety of purposes including individual counseling, relationship counseling, organization development, talent management, career selection, career transition, and so on. Most of the well-known and respected personality inventories clearly specify their intended use and they should only be used for their intended applicability. Rather than testing general knowledge or specific skills, personality inventories ask people questions about themselves. These questions may take a variety of forms. When taking such a test, the individual might have to decide whether each of a series of statements is accurate as a self-description or respond to a series of true-false questions about personal beliefs. Most inventories yield several scores, each intended to identify a distinct aspect of personality. Personality inventory is a printed form that consists of a set of statements or questions applying to human behavior. The list of questions is a standard one and requires specific answers such as yes, no, and cannot decide. As the questions demand close-ended answers, these assessments are quite objective in nature. Cattell's 16 PF or 16 personality factor is one such personality inventory. Let us now know about some of the popular personality inventories available. The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or known as MBTI, instrument is perhaps the most popular widely used personality assessment test in the world. Introversion-extraversion is a classic dimension that began with Hume and is represented in nearly every personality theory. The sensing-intuition, or SI, thinking-feeling, or TP, introversion-extraversion, or IE, and perceiving-judging, or PJ, are the four dimensions that can differ for each individual, resulting in combinations of ISTJ, ISTP, ISFP, ISFJ personality types possibly. Briggs and Myers, 1998. For example, an ESTJ is an organizer, practical in nature, and energetic in activity. An ESTJ is also a good administrator. It is widely used and accepted all over the world for personal counseling, career guidance, talent management, organizational development, and so on. The either preferences and 4 dichotomies for 16 MBTI types, that is 4 dichotomies each with 2 options, 4 to the power of 2 is equal to 16. As codes such as ENFJ, ESTP, INFJ, ISTP, and so on. These 16 types and their brief description is depicted and presented in the following table. British and American psychologist Raymond Cattell, 1905 to 1998, developed 16 personality factors, popularly known as 16 PF. After decades of psychometric research into intrapersonal psychological structure, it is one of the comparatively older and well-respected personality inventories that is used by clinical psychologists as well as other professionals including HR professionals. The 16 PF assesses traits and unlike types, they are not dichotomies. An individual is not put into one of the two mutually exclusive categories. Instead, his or her score on these factors indicate whether he or she is leaning. High score and low score indicate the two extremes of the factor respectively. The 16 personality factor assesses 16 primary personality traits, also called as source traits, of an individual known as personality factors and are listed as warmth, reasoning, emotional stability, dominance, liveliness, rule consciousness, social boldness, sensitivity, vigilance, abstractedness, privateness, apprehension, openness to change, self-reliance, perfectionism and tension. Here is an example representation of sample of 16 personality factor of pilots, creative artists and writers. The Big 5 personality trait is also called 5-factor model or FFM. It represents 5 broad factors or dimensions of personality, sometimes referred by the acronym OCEAN or OCEAN, which stands for openness to experience, conscientiousness, extraversion, also surgency, agreeableness and neuroticism. Beneath each of these proposed global factors, a number of correlated and more specific primary factors are claimed. The Big 5 OCEAN model, as we can see, each of the 5 factors is quite broad and consists of a range of more specific traits. In the Big 5 or 5-factor model, the factors are dimensions, not types. Hence, people vary continuously on them, with most people falling in between the extremes. This test is quite reliable and widely accepted among contemporary psychologists, psychiatrists and personality researchers. These factors are considered universal across diverse culture, and these factors are stable over a period of 45 years beginning in young adulthood. Some other personality questionnaires are Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, Trait State Anxiety Inventory, Differential Personality Inventory, Edward Personality Inventory, Eysenck Personality Inventory, Maudsley Personality Inventory, Omnibus Personality Inventory, Berne-Renter Personality Questionnaire, California Psychology Inventory or CPI. Advantages and disadvantages of personality inventory. Personality inventories have certain advantages over projective tests and interviews in the sense that inventories are standardized. Also, observer bias and interpretation bias are not possible due to their objective frame. Inventories are also superior to projective tests in terms of validity and reliability. However, there are some problems with inventories too. Even though good at validity and some people still fake their answers and respond in socially acceptable ways. Also, some people follow a regular course of answering the statements without actually considering them, whereas others may pick statements to answer at random rather than answering each and every statement. Though the task of personality assessment and measurement is a skilled and sophisticated one, today prediction of behavior are based on measurement of personality. Most of the earlier inventories lacked subtlety. Many people were able to fake or bias their answers since the items presented were easily seen to reflect gross disturbances. Indeed, in many of these inventories, maladaptive tendencies would be reflected in either all true or all false answers. Questionnaire. Questionnaires are a written self-report technique where participants are given a preset number of questions to respond to. They can be administered in person, by post, online or the telephone, or to a group of participants simultaneously. Questionnaires provide a relatively cheap, quick and efficient way of obtaining large amount of information from a large sample of people. Data can be collected relatively quickly because the researcher would not need to be present when the questionnaires were completed. This is useful for large population when interviews would be impractical. It can be an effective means of measuring the behavior, attitudes, preferences, opinions and intentions. Questionnaires can be classified as both quantitative and qualitative method depending on the nature of the questions. Specifically, answers obtained through close-ended questions with multiple choices, answer options are analyzed using quantitative methods. Answers obtained to open-ended questionnaire, questions are analyzed using qualitative methods. It refers to a drive for securing answers to question by using a form which respondent fills in. In collecting information for the participant himself about his personality characteristic, a form consists of a series of printed or written questions is used, and the participant responds to these questions in the space provided in columns of yes, no or cannot say. For example, do you enjoy being alone? Yes, no or cannot say. Do you enjoy seeing others succeed? Answering has to be done in yes, no or cannot say. Personality questionnaires assess personal behavior preferences, that is how one likes to work. They are not concerned with abilities, but how one sees oneself in way he or she relates to others, his or her approach to problem, and how he or she deals with feelings and emotions. With this type of assessment, there are no right or wrong answers. The questions that follow are examples of the type of questions one may come across in personality questionnaires. There are two common formats to personality questionnaires. In one format, one is asked to rate themselves. In the other, one is asked to choose between different statements that look at different aspects of personality. Strengths. Questionnaires are a relatively cheap and quick way to gather a large amount of data, has higher level of objectivity compared to many alternative methods of primary data collection. Since questionnaires can be completed privately and often anonymously, responses may be more likely to be honest. However, not having an experimenter or researcher to supervise it, completion could present a problem. Weaknesses. Social desirability issue may arise where participants give incorrect responses to try to put themselves in a socially acceptable light. Distributing questionnaires en masse, example via post or the internet, means that any data collected relies on responses to be returned. Response rates are often poor, plus it may be that only a certain type of person returns questionnaire, so generalizing the sample of results to large population can be unconvincing. Questionnaires may be flawed if some questions are leading, that is, they suggest a desired response in a way they are worded. If any questions are misunderstood, participants completing questionnaires privately cannot get clarification on the meaning or responding accurately from an experimenter, so may complete them incorrectly. Questionnaires can include the following types of questions. Closed questions. Closed questions structure the answer by only allowing responses which fit into pre-coded categories. Data that can be placed into a category is called nominal data. The category can be restricted to as few as two options, that is dichotomous, example yes or no, male or female, etc., or include quite complex list of alternative form which the respondent can choose, example polytomous. Closed questions can also provide ordinal data which can be ranked. This often involves using a continuous rating scale to measure the strength of attitudes or emotions. Open questions allow people to express what they think in their own words. Open-ended questions enable the respondent to answer in as much detail as they like in their own words. For gathering more in-depth answers from respondents, open questions work better. These give no preset answer options and instead allow the respondent to put down exactly what they like in their own words. Open questions are often used for complex questions that cannot be answered in a few simple categories but require more detailed discussion. Types of questionnaire. Computer questionnaire. Respondents are asked to answer the questionnaire which is sent by email. The advantages of computer questionnaire include their inexpensive price, time efficiency, and respondents do not feel pressurized, therefore can answer when they have time, giving more accurate answers. However, the main shortcoming of the email questionnaire is that sometimes respondents do not bother answering them and they can just ignore the questionnaire. Telephone questionnaire. Researchers may choose to call potential respondents with the aim of getting them to answer the questionnaire. The advantage of the telephone questionnaire is that it can be completed during the short amount of time. The main disadvantage of the phone questionnaire is that it is expensive most of the time. Moreover, most of the people do not feel comfortable to answer many questions asked through the phone, and it is difficult to get sample group to answer questionnaires over the phone. In-house survey. This type of questionnaire involves the researcher visiting respondents in their houses or workplaces. The advantage of in-house survey is that more focus towards the question can be gained from respondents. However, In-house survey also have a range of disadvantages which include being time consuming, more expensive, and respondents may not wish to have the researcher in their house or workplace for various reasons. Mail questionnaire. This sort of questionnaire involves the researcher to send the questionnaire list to respondent through post, often attaching prepaid envelope. Mail questionnaire have an advantage of providing more accurate answer because respondents can answer the questionnaire in their spare time. The disadvantages associated with mail questionnaire include them being expensive, time consuming, and sometimes they end up in the bin put by the respondent. Multiple choice questions. Respondents are offered a set of answers they have to choose from. The downside of questionnaire with multiple choice question is that if there are too many answers to choose from, it makes the questionnaire confusing and boring and discourages the respondent to answer the questionnaire. Dichotomous questions. This type of question gives two options to respondent, yes or no, to choose from. It is the easiest form of questionnaire for the respondent in terms of responding it. Scaling questions, also referred to as ranking questions, they present an option for respondent to rank the available answers to the question on the scale of a range of values, for example from 1 to 10. Interviews. It is a data collection method between two or more persons where questions are asked by a person, interviewer, to obtain information from another person, that is the interviewee. In an interview, direct question is used to learn about a person's life history, personality traits, or current mental state. Interviews are used to identify personality disturbances to select people for job, colleges, or special programs, and to study the dynamics of personality. Interviews also provide information for counseling or therapy. For instance, a counselor might ask a depressed person, "Have you ever contemplated suicide? What were the circumstances?" The counselor might then follow by asking, "How did you feel about it?" or "How is what you are now feeling different from what you felt then?" In addition to providing information, interviews make it possible to observe a person's tone of voice, hand gestures, postures, and facial expressions. Such body language cues are important because they may radically alter the message sent, as when a person claims to be completely calm but trembles uncontrollably. Interview is a method of personality assessment in which the interviewee has to answer the questions asked by the professional in a structured or unstructured fashion. Some therapists note down the answers of the interviewee in a survey process. This type of interview is unstructured in manner and moves naturally. It is a technique of eliciting information directly from the subject about his personality in face-to-face contacts. It gives an opportunity for mental exchange of ideas and information between the client and the psychologist. Interviews are different from questionnaires as they involve social interaction. Unlike questionnaire methods, researchers need training in how to interview. Quite often, interviews will be recorded by the researcher and the data written up as a transcript, a written account of interview questions and answers which can be analyzed at a later date. Interviewer may use open-ended questions that allow clients to elaborate on their thoughts and feelings and answer questions in their own words. Interviews take many forms, some very informal, others very structured. Types of interview. There are various types of interview. Let us study some of them. Structured interview. This technique adopts a systematic and predetermined approach. A structured interview is a quantitative research method where the interviewer uses a set of prepared closed-ended questions in the form of an interview schedule, which he or she reads out exactly as worded. Interviews schedule have a standardized format, which means the same questions are asked to each interviewee in the same order. The interviewer will not deviate from the interview schedule except to clarify the meaning of the question or probe beyond the answers received. A structured interview is also known as formal interview, like a job interview. Unstructured interviews. Unstructured interviews do not use any set questions. Instead, the interviewer asks open-ended questions based on a specific research topic and will try to let the interview flow like a natural conversation. The interviewer modifies his or her question to suit the candidate's specific experiences. Unstructured interviews are sometimes referred to as discovery interviews and are more like a guided conversation than a strict structured interview. They are sometimes called informal interviews. Semi-structured interviews. These are interviews that use an interview protocol to help guide the researcher through the interview process. While this can incorporate conversational aspects, it is mostly a guided conversation between the interviewer and the interviewee. It does maintain some structure, hence the name semi-structured, but it also provides interviewer with the ability to probe the interviewee for additional details. The interviewer may decide to choose this interview method as it offers a great deal of flexibility. The interviewer do not have to worry about needing to conduct several rounds of interview because the interview protocol will keep the interviewer focused on gathering all the information that he or she needs. Even though that is the goal with an interview protocol, there may be a need for additional probing so that interviewer can get more details about the participants' thoughts, feelings and opinions. Focus group interview. Focus group interview is a qualitative approach where a group of respondents are interviewed together, used to gain an in-depth understanding of social issues. The method aims to obtain data from a purposely selected group of individuals rather than from a statistically representative sample of a broader population. The role of the interview as moderator is to make sure the group interact with each other and do not drift off topic. Ideally, the moderator will be similar to the participants in terms of appearance, have adequate knowledge of the topic being discussed and exercise mild unobtrusive control over dominant talkers and shy participants. A researcher must be highly skilled to conduct a focus group interview. Stress interview. This is one of the important types of interview held to assess the personality for the selection of any personnel. This interview is held to discover the interviewee's capacity to get some emotional and intellectual strain. Stress interviews are the examples of situational techniques. The interviewer deliberately tries to make anxious in the subject to determine how he or she behaves under stress. Employers use tests in an employment interview to find the proper candidate for available position and the company itself. While the employment interview evaluates your qualification and skills for the work in question, a personal interview determines how well your personality suits the job or the company's community. The personality interview also is a useful tool when evaluating candidates with similar qualifications. Computerized interviews. When a person is distressed and goes to a psychologist or psychiatrist, typically the expert does a diagnostic interview to find out how a person is feeling and what complaints or symptoms he or she has. In many cases, such interviews are based on a specific series of questions. Because the questions are always the same, some researchers have begun to wonder why not let a computer ask them. Clinical interview. A clinical interview involves counselor asking individuals questions to gather pertinent information. In interviewing, therapist attempts to help individual feel comfortable so that candid and relevant information can be revealed. Clinical interviewing occurs throughout the counseling process but is typically a major component of the initial session. The initial interview and other interviewing assessments conducted during the counseling process can be useful in assessing client issues. The effectiveness of clinical interviewing is more dependent on counselors' communication skills than are more formal assessment techniques. Depending on the type of information sought, therapists may use formal assessments and behavioral observations to supplement the clinical interview. These techniques help gather information in a systematic manner. However, many counselors believe that there is no substitute for wealth of information typically gained during the clinical interview. Summary of the module. From this module, we learned about the nature and types of personality inventories, uses of questionnaires in psychological testing, and types of interview methods used for personality assessment.